Ladies and gentlemen, Sir Stirling Moss.
Thank you all very much. 63 or 4 years ago, when I just started motor racing, Gregor Grant actually nicknamed me the boy. And I must say, coming to this place where there are even people even older than I am, makes me feel like a boy again. So that's very nice. But the point is that I feel a bit of an imposter, because there's a guy here, Derek Bell, somewhere, I think you've spoken to him. He actually won Le Mans, I think more times than I even entered the damn race. So really, he ought to be here doing it. But having said that, I'm very honoured. And what do? Do I cut something off?
No, you don't cut something. You don't have to do anything. I tell you what, why don't you just sit yourself down on your magic stick for just a few moments? Because I know you never really liked the Le Mans 24 Hours very much. You had to share with another driver.
Well, I'd share it with another. The trouble is, first of all, 24 hours is a waste of time, because you're going all through the night and everything when you should be chasing the birds. But that was one reason. The other reason is you took the car, you obviously took much care of it as you possibly could, and you give it to a co-driver who after 3 hours would come back in and say, well, I'm afraid the brakes are like this, pulling to the right, the oil pressure's fluctuating, all these bad things. So it's too long for me, actually. I do think it's a great event, I must say that. And now, of course, they flat out the whole way.
Well, I think that's the point. I mean, you've always said to me that the real reason why you didn't like Le Mans was because when you're in a racing car, you like to go absolutely flat out. And in the periods when you were doing Le Mans, when the cars weren't as reliable as they are now, you were told you had to drive at 8 tenths, 8.5 tenths, and that was really against your religion.
Exactly. I mean, to take a car to Silverstone when we use 6,200 revs, then you go to Le Mans, they say don't use more than 5, 6. Little realising, of course, you can go higher revs in the gears, but still. But it was never my cup of tea, really. It's too long. But I do think, and I think it's the most amazing event, and I wish I'd won it. I mean, Derek could have given me one of his, couldn't he? You know, without missing it, you know.
But in fact, when you were with the Jaguar team, the tactics usually used to be, because you were the fastest driver in the team, that they would send you out as the hare to try and get the pace of the race up and wear the Ferraris out. And then when your car broke, you hoped that the Ferraris had already broken and somebody else won the race for Jaguar.
Yeah, well, that was the idea, and unfortunately somebody else always won it. So I never did it. But I did get fastest lap once, so that's my big claim to fame.
Well, you got it more than once, I think. The year that you certainly would have won it, I think, was 1955, when you were sharing the 300 SLR Mercedes with Fangio, and you were well in the lead when at 2 o'clock in the morning, because of the dreadful accident that had happened, the Mercedes directors decided to withdraw the car, and you got the word to stop.
Yeah, well, in truth, we had actually, I think it was 4 laps lead then, with the Mercedes, which was, of course, an unbelievable car, the 300 SLR, and John Fitch started a movement going around, so saying to the directors, you know, I think we ought to pull out as though it's going to help bring anybody back to life, but still. So as you can understand, with a really good car like that, driving with Fangio, I was a bit disappointed, actually.
Now, the fascinating thing about you in those days, of course, a driver would do Formula 1 and he would do sports car racing and probably lots of other things as well, all at the same time. Yeah. When you were a works Mercedes driver in 1955, apart from the British Grand Prix where you beat Fangio, you normally were happy to follow in his wheel tracks in the Formula 1 races, but he could never get near you in the sports car races. Now, why was that?
I don't know, it's a good question. I know Fangio, for some reason, didn't like a closed-in wheel, front wheels. Frankly, when you're driving these cars, I never looked at the front wheels. I mean, the only time you get them is when they throw water up and you have to put one of those things to stop the spray going in your face. But Fangio, for whatever reason, didn't like even the streamlined Formula 1 car. And what you've got to realise is the sports car actually was just a thinly disguised Grand Prix car, really. Slightly another half litre, of course, and but even faster. I mean, the SLR was considerably faster than the Formula 1 car, purely because of the streamlining. But it was an incredible car to drive, I must say. But I was very happy to be right behind Fangio. In fact, I was nicknamed the Train because we were so together. And following the Maestro, from my point of view, the only thing you could possibly do would be next best to him, and that's all I wanted, because he was, in my mind, the greatest Formula 1 driver ever, actually.
if you're in sports car racing, like Le Mans, like the other great sports car races that you did do, like the Tourist Trophy you won many times, both in Ireland and at Goodwood, there was always a team manager in the background. I don't know why this is doing this. If somebody can do whatever they have to do to stop this doing this, when you were with Jaguar, your team manager was Lofty England. When you were with Aston Martin, your team manager was John Wyer. When you were at Mercedes, your team manager was Neubauer. All pretty kind of scary guys. I mean, did they kind of pin you to the wall and tell you had to behave?
John Wyer would pin you to the wall most of the lot, I suppose. Lofty England didn't really care too much, I think. And Neubauer, of course, his main thing was to look after his drivers. I mean, he was a fantastic man, and you know, we really respected him as a person, as a team manager. And when you saw him timing people, he wasn't timing their laps or anything like that, because there were people in the pits doing that. He'd be timing how long your gear changes were, and he could therefore say, well, if it took you longer to get from in one gear than it used to, then he'd say, well, that car may be having a problem. And but a wonderful person. I will never forget at Le Mans, came over the PA that anybody without an armband, of course Neubauer never wore an armband, anybody without an armband would be thrown out. So Neubauer took his handkerchief and tied it around his arm and said, that to you. He's such a wonderful man, actually, a really terrific person.
John Wyer, they used to call the death ray, because when he gave you a dirty look, it was like sort of two eyes boring into your head. Was he quite a scary man?
I was scarier than the others, I guess, yes, but John was a very methodical person. He worked things out. He said, look, all we need to do is keep it quite a slow speed, and if you like that all the time, we're going to win it. And I must say, he was a very good team manager from that point of view. Yeah, he was.
Now, the great sports car races, I mean, particularly one remembers, of course, the 1955 Mille Miglia, where you drove 1,000 miles in around 10 hours in the 300 SLR, a fantastic victory. You had a co-driver, but of course the co-driver wasn't doing any driving. That was Dennis Jenkinson, who was helping to give you navigational guidance. But you always preferred to drive single-handedly. When you did have to have a co-driver, and I mean, just look down the list of the people you had as co-drivers, people like Peter Collins, like Fangio, of course, Graham Hill, Jack Fairman, Peter Walker. How did you get on with them? I mean, if they weren't as quick as you, what happened if, like happened at the Nürburgring and the 1,000 kilometres, you were standing waiting to take over the car and Jack Fairman put it in the ditch?
Yeah, that was a bit upsetting, but it wasn't his fault. He got pushed there by some back marker he was passing. But no, I mean, I've always really enjoyed sports car racing, I must admit, and having a co-driver. Sometimes it'd be difficult, but because of my driving style, because I'd lean right back and I had my arms straight, I could therefore get away invariably, even with tall people like Dan Gurney. If they gave me a sort of 3-inch cushion underneath, then I could reach the pedals and see over the windscreen. Because when you're racing, the thing you must remember with all these racing cars, sports cars particularly, obviously not these saloons, but you'd always look over the windscreen. You never look through the windscreen unless hailstones are coming down or something like that. But in principle, you always look over the windscreen, and therefore it was important with driving with Dan that I had a 3-inch cushion which would get me up high enough.
Because he was 6'3" or something.
Yes, we were well over 6'8". Well, everybody's bigger than me, actually, or most of them. Not Nuvolari, he was quicker.
Finally, Stirling, you never stop. You are still racing sports cars. You've got your lovely little Oscar, and also, of course, you just bought an RSK Porsche, which you were racing in California just a few weeks ago. So,
well, I never got to the race, actually.
Yeah, but tell us about that in California.
Very unfortunately, there's a fantastic RS61 Porsche which I purchased for a lot of money, and I thought, well, I'll race it in America on a great circuit called Laguna Seca. So I left it out there, and then I went out on the warm-up lap. Now we're going really slowly on this warm-up lap, following the pace car, and I came around this corner, and I think something may have gone wrong. Anyway, and suddenly it flicked round, and I spun, stopped on the inside, about 16 foot off the track, and some other guy came round trying to catch up the people who've gone before in a Lotus, got on the wet and of course spun it, came straight and banged in the front of my car. So I'm now waiting for my Porsche to come back here looking a bit dented. but hopefully nothing was hurt except the bodywork, which is not so serious.
So we're going to continue to see you racing both the Oscar and the Porsche.
Oh yeah, the Oscar at Goodwood and the Porsche as soon as it gets back over here, which will be probably now next year.
Well, we'll be watching you in the Oscar in 2 weeks' time. Finally, Stirling, what I must ask you about is how you feel about having an event like this right in the middle of London, because you have always been a Londoner since you first came into racing, and you were racing at a time just towards the end of your career when drivers started to move themselves to Switzerland or Monte Carlo to save purchase tax. Now I happen to know you don't enjoy paying purchase tax, income tax. You don't enjoy paying income tax, but you have never thought of moving out of your beloved London.
No, well, I'm English, and I really very patriotic, mind you. Having said that, nowadays there aren't many English left. I mean, you know, so really, I don't know if it helps being patriotic, but there aren't many of us. There's a few of us here, I'm glad to hear. But no, I think it is the greatest place in the world. I mean, I've been many other places, and there's nowhere really that compares with it. Even though there are many things which are awful, but look at this. I mean, what a fantastic place this is. The only place like this, I must say, is near where I live, and that's Hyde Park. We could have one of these in Hyde Park as well, couldn't we?
Well, there's an idea. Well, we've got to make this one work first, but it seems to be working particularly well. And part of why it's working is because it's had wonderful support, not least from someone like, ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for Sir Stirling Moss.
I want to open it. Now everybody's in here.
Well, you've opened it.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, it's all open. Let's go and have a look at it. Thank you very much. Thank you.